I lost my first husband when I was 31, and so, it does, the average age of living is 59.
Okay, everyone, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership Friday Talks Business Advancement Series. My name is Lisa McGinnis, and I work for the College of Central Florida. I'm the Manager of Marketing and Public Relations, and we're so thrilled that you're here with us live in person here at CF this morning at the Hampton Center. We also are live on Facebook, so we have people joining us there as well. And we're happy to welcome you to our CF Hampton Center. This is our campus where our dental assisting program takes place. You may have seen those students around this morning, and also very soon we will be adding our dental hygiene program here at this campus as well. So today we're going to hear about how depression is a costly condition for businesses. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, depression costs employers an estimated $44 billion a year in lost productivity. We know that about half of employees who have depression are untreated, but we know that with proper treatment, those individuals with depression can get better. And the key is to help employees to be able to access effective care and support. And our presenter this morning is Albert C. Shaw III. He is the Director of Marketing for Zone Health and Fitness. And Mr. Shaw is an educator, speaker, advocate, and a business professional with more than 12 years in mental health research, study, and experience. He has an extensive background in business with a focus in marketing and entrepreneurship. And he's a father of 7, and he's joined this morning by his beautiful wife, Erica Shaw. Welcome to you as well. Thanks, of course, to Andrea Bailey from the CEP. She's the one that provided coffee for us this morning, those snacks, and she always facilitates our sessions here. She will be monitoring the questions on Facebook Live, and if you haven't had a chance to help yourself to some refreshments, please do that. And now we'd like to welcome to the podium Mr. Albert C. Shaw III.
Thank you for that. So you said the biggest part of my talk, which was my 7 kids. So typically I like to start things with that, right? Because I have a big family and I love having a big family. So it's a lot of fun. So today's conversation, we're going to be talking about depression, right? That it is a costly condition for businesses. Just to give you guys, I am an educator, and not just that, but I'm a speaker, right? So I'm actually very happy that we're in this setting because I like to teach, especially because of my background in mental health. But I found it interesting, and I thought about it. I said, how do I want to give this talk, right? And I said, the very first thing that I believe that I should do is talk about what actually qualifies me to give this talk, right? Because it's really important to know where your source of information is coming from, right? So, clinically diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. For 15 years, I've lived with bipolar 2 disorder. A lot of people don't know the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 is typically what they portray on TV, right? The people that are just all over the place and they don't really have any self-control. And, they typically talk about that. But the one part of bipolar that a lot of people do not talk about is bipolar 2. Bipolar 2 is similar to bipolar 1, but we live more in a depressive state, right? We deal with a lot of depression. We don't have a lot of ups, but we have a lot of downs. So when we talk about discussing depression, I live in the place of depression almost every day, all the time. Some people would consider me a very high functioning person with depression. So I feel like with my 15 years of experience, it gives me the ability to articulate to a group of people like you and the people that are on Facebook watching. Just to talk a little bit about it, I've attempted suicide twice. It's happened twice for me. And the first time it happened was back in 2012, is when I was initially diagnosed. I thought that, my life was just kind of all over the place. And I didn't think that I had a mental health issue. But when they put me inpatient, that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar. And I would be in and out of facilities for almost 12 years. I've been in several inpatient programs for unmanaged mental health and bipolar situations. And I've also had a lot of treatment in and out of intensive care programs and different sources of knowledge to help me to learn about bipolar disorder, because I wanted to be able to live with it and function. Is it hard? It's extremely hard. But I've also like to talk about the fact that I have over a decade, like I said, of lived experience. And I believe that as I give this talk, you'll see how passionate I am about mental health. So if I have to take a minute at some point or a few seconds, you guys just allow me to do that. I've put a lot of research into mental health and how it affects us, especially business-wise, right? So my experience in business, I have about 15 years of business and entrepreneurial experience. I've helped many businesses thrive, and I've started up a lot of different businesses. So I know the mindsets of employers from small businesses to large businesses. And I see the disparity that they all have, right? So I have an undergrad degree in business administration. My focus is entrepreneurship, teaching people how to run effective businesses, right? And that's what this talk is going to be about. We're going to kind of combine mental health with business. My friend John is here. I do have professional associations with organizations that advocate for mental health. You have organizations like NAMI, the DBSA, and these are places that really support and advocate for mental health awareness. I also am a registered behavioral therapist for different types of individuals with intellectual disorders. I also have a background as a mental health tech. So I believe that all of this makes me pretty qualified to give this talk, all right? So we're gonna just kind of move right into it. Some very interesting facts, and I'm thinking like, what facts can I give that will kind of be eye-opening, right? Because this talk ultimately is about advancing mental health in the workplace, but also how we can see how depression is affecting our bottom line in business, because it affects it, and a lot of us don't know. The American Psychiatric Association says that depression costs the US economy an estimated $210 billion each year in lost productivity from presenteeism and absenteeism. I want you guys to remember those two words as we go throughout this presentation, because these two things, presenteeism and absenteeism, is how businesses are losing money on their bottom line. Another good fact, 85% of workers report that the workplace itself affects their mental health and well-being. Right. Can you guys relate to that? Right? Because we live here, right? We're here more than we're actually probably at home, right? We're working. So how accurate is it that almost all the workers say that the workplace affects their mental health and well-being? And I want to go back to point out this number, that depression is costing an estimated $210 billion. Imagine a business that you run. Imagine the money that you could save or the money you could reinvest into your business with this number, right? So today we're going to talk about being proactive. So what is depression? We're going to get into it. So depression, and this definition comes from the Mayo Clinic. Depression is a mood disorder that causes people sadness and a loss of interest, pretty much in most things. Depression isn't about having an off day. It's more substantial. It affects how a person feels, thinks, and behaves. The reason I love talking about mental health is because in positions like this, we can break the stigma. Mental health is extremely stigmatized, not just in the workplace, but just in general. And a lot of us don't understand depression. We really don't. So some interesting things to see. In the US, more than 17 million adults live with depression. Depression is highest among young adults ages 18 to 25. Depression is also a leading cause of disability worldwide and a major contributor to global burden of disease. This is a fun number. The annual global, right? We talked about how it affects the United States, right? At $210 billion. But globally, the economic impact of depression and anxiety and lost productivity is $1 trillion. Trillion, not million, not billion. We're talking about trillion. So I have a thing that I wanted to do because our next topic is, well, what does depression look like in the workplace? But I'm interested to know, in this room, can anyone point out the depressed person? Who in here is depressed? Can you tell? Right? Can you tell who's depressed? Can you tell who's battling a mental health issue in here? Typically you can't, especially in the workplace. Quick story. Talking to a coworker the other day, and I'm pretty open about being bipolar. I'm very transparent about it, especially because I'm an advocate for mental health. And her and I, we were talking, and she started to bring up her brother and the fact that he dealt with mental illness as well. And she looked at me and she started to cry as she was talking to me. And I'm thinking, well, what is she crying about? And she said, I see the potential in my brother through you. She said, if you wouldn't have ever told me that you had bipolar 2 disorder, I wouldn't have ever known. So what does that say to us? It says to us that depression or mental illness, there is no face for it. There's no face. Because quite a few people in here may be dealing with an episode of depression, but you would never know, right? So what does depression look like in the workplace? Some signs might be things like withdrawal or isolation from other people, poor self-hygiene or significant change in appearance, late arrival at work, missed meetings, absent days, procrastination, missed deadlines, reduced productivity, and subpar performance in tasks, increased errors or difficulty making decisions. Do you guys know, or can you, just on these things, because there's a long list of what depression looks like in the workplace, but can anybody in here identify with any of these things as far as what you may see in your staff, or even what you might see in yourself, right? For those of us that manage people, you may be able to see some of these things. Because guess what? Depression isn't just, like I said before, it's not just an off day. It affects a person's cognitive abilities to make decisions and to lead, especially when we get into leadership positions and we have depressed leaders. Let's discuss that. Because if a leader is depressed and they're trying to lead other people, what do you think is going to happen if they're making poor decisions? What's going to happen if they're making errors? What's going to happen if they're missing meetings and they're late for work? How do you think the rest of your staff is going to be affected by that, right? So we're talking about depression from a leadership standpoint also. Now, at one point, we're going to get into more of leadership and depression. But I just want to paint a picture of what depression looks like in the workplace. As we seen earlier, nobody in here could tell who's depressed. And the craziest part about it is half of people, almost more than half of the people with mental illness are untreated. So even if you know if you're depressed in the room, more people don't even know if they're depressed. They're not getting treatment for it, right? Pretty crazy stuff, man, when you come to really, when you bring down and really think about depression, it's a very normalized thing. We all deal with depression on some level. We all deal with it. But then we have people who live with it every single day. These people may be your employees. They may be your management team, all dealing with their own thing. And what do you have to do when you come to work and you put on a what? A smile, right? So I think it's important as leaders to be able to recognize the signs of depression and also mental illness in our staff. Because as we're going to see, there are numbers that are very specific to business, right? Because I know some people want to see the actual numbers. Yeah, 1 trillion, 210 billion. Yeah, those are figures, but they might be screwed at some point, right? So let's go to our next slide about depression impacting the workplace. There are two main things that affect the workplace and an ROI for business. So these are the terms. Remember, I told you guys to keep these terms in your head. Absenteeism, easy one, refers to the habitual non-presence of an employee at their job. I found some information, and it says that absenteeism is 50% of business loss, almost 50% of business lost in a business because people are not coming to work. They don't feel like getting out of the bed, right? It's a sign of depression. They don't want to come to work. So guess what? They stay home, or they have to leave early because it's just too much going on. right? Next thing, presenteeism. Now, this is the fun one. It refers to the lost productivity that occurs when employees are not fully functioning in the workplace because of an illness, injury, or other condition. Businesses lose a lot of money right here because some people, and I'm going to bring it to you very real, it's hard to focus on being your best at work when you're depressed. It's hard to follow out the objectives of the things that you need to do when you're depressed. You can't make good decisions when you're depressed. So guess what? Now we're getting into lost productivity is where we're missing a lot of our money. People can't do their job right. But guess what? The cost of living now is so high, you know what I mean? People are worried about everything that's going on outside of the workplace. Losing productivity. But guess what? You still have to work. Because when you're making a decision between performing your best at a job and dealing with not having enough money to buy food for your family, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna come to work depressed or not. But guess what happens when you come to work depressed? Because you don't know how your lights are gonna stay on. You're dealing with a situation with your children. You're in a custody battle. You're dealing with all of these things, and the expectation is to come to work and perform your best. But can you do that if you're depressed? Can you do that if you're not getting sleep? It's another sign of depression. Insomnia, you can't sleep. How are you going to perform if you can't rest? If you have anxiety, you're worried at work. You're supposed to be focused on a project, and you're anxious about this situation at home. So you can't be fully present. How can you be present? So much going on, right? We're gonna talk about something called a depression calculator, right? This depression calculator says that on average, and these are local numbers, local to Ocala, Florida. On average, small businesses with 100 employees or less in southern regions lose over $121,857 in mental health related costs every year. Now that brings it here, because when we're talking about the disparity in the United States or even globally, that sounds good. But in our local community, small businesses are losing on average about this much money. What could your business do with that extra money? What could you do? Maybe invest into more marketing? Could you invest into the mental health of your employees? Because the reality is, especially in a time of COVID, right? More people, statistics say that more people are starting businesses now. So there are a lot of small businesses. I'm a small business coach. I coach businesses. And to know that businesses are losing this much money is alarming, in my opinion. So we're gonna go to the next slide, right? So I am all about being solution-oriented. Because at the end of the day, we can discuss depression, we can discuss mental illness, but then the question becomes, well, what do we do about it? How can we address depression in the workplace? So, as I said before, we get back to my main point, which is the very first one, is educating our leadership team. Because if your leaders don't know what to look for, then how can they help? How can they assist, right? So there are actually a lot of free tools given through the American Psychiatric Association, the Center for Workplace Mental Health. There are so many resources on there for businesses to get a higher return on investment for their businesses, but also how to mentally take care of their staff, right? So it's all about educating your leadership team so that, because we know that the success of a business trickles down from the top to the bottom. So if the head isn't right, the business won't perform, right? Because our leadership team has to know how to lead by example. But more importantly than that, they have to know how to recognize the signs. Because let me tell you something. Depression can be helped with early detection. And I want you guys to think about that. Early detection. The sooner you can see a teammate or a staff member displaying signs of irritability, they're not making good decisions. Say this is one of your top performers, right? And now you start to notice that they're late for work, they're making mistakes, it seems like their head isn't in the game. If you can be an early intervention and see that early, you can give them help before it spirals into something even worse. Because the reality of it is 5% of total expenditures for businesses go towards suicide of employees. 5%. I have a lady that came into Zone because we do a lot of community work, and they're having an event, Marion County, and they're having a CrossFit event to raise awareness about PTSD in veterans. Well, the event also is about a local firefighter that committed suicide. And they're raising awareness for that. So could you imagine, and he was a very known firefighter, right? Can you imagine how much it will cost to replace someone with the type of experience that he has or had at that point, right? Because now we're talking about our pockets. Now you have to train someone else to put in that position. 5%. It may not seem like a big number, but this is when depression goes untreated and unnoticed, right? Because if depression does not get treated, unfortunately, suicide, the worst part of depression, is a thing. And we're spending money on that. So educating your leadership team on the signs and how to also offer resources to these people as well, because there's a lot of resources in the city. Next tip, awareness. We have to talk about it. We have to normalize mental health and the discussions around it, because too many of us are dealing with it for it to not be normalized. Why is something we have areas that just study mental health, right? So this is a global issue. It's not just an issue here, it's an issue everywhere. So it's about spreading awareness. There is we're gonna talk about it next, which is the Right Direction Initiative. Not sure if you guys heard of it, but this is one of those free tools that are on the American Psychiatric Association's website. Right Direction is an initiative that was started to help employers to normalize the conversations about depression. And it's so cool because they even give you printouts on how to start it in your organization. Everything is already done for you. They give you presentations for leadership on how to implement the program. They give you presentations for managers and employees on how to manage the program. This is free for us as business owners. They give you handouts, posters. And when employees do go to this website, then they have all of these resources offered by the American Psychiatric Association and partners. Because guess what? Again, it is time to normalize mental health, especially in the workplace. So I gave everybody a little flyer, this thing right here, which next thing we want to do is look into corporate gym memberships. And I'm going to tell you, this isn't just me selling a gym membership because I work at Zone. It's because I understand the value in working out. If anybody in here sees a therapist, a psychiatrist, or even a doctor, what is the one thing that they tell you to do all the time? Go work out. Because it is something about the chemicals, the endorphins, when you work out that make you happy. So it takes depression, it doesn't take it away, but even if you can just for a second take a break from it, right? You can do that in the gym. Personal story. I do a lot of meditation, but Zone offers a yoga class. And I have been doing yoga and meditation consistently for the last 3 months. And my mental health, my energy, my attitude, and everything is all different because I take time to take care of my body. Taking care of my body takes care of my mind. Because remember, I live with bipolar disorder. I live in a depressive state. So anything that can help, helps. And this isn't just me saying that. Your doctor will back that up. Because working out makes us feel good. It doesn't just help us with the endorphins, but it also makes us confident, right? You feel confident when you're working on yourself in the gym. So it's just so many things, so many ways that you can help your staff by having a corporate gym membership. We're going to also talk about the collaborative care model. This has a lot to do with if you're already offering benefits to your staff and really integrating and making a holistic plan, right, to address mental illness. I'm trying to think of it, is it called the depression screening tool, the PHQ-9, is that what it's called? The PHQ-9? Making sure that that is a part of the evaluation process, right? Because I got my PHQ-9 done a few months ago, and my doctor said, I don't know how you're functioning. She said, your depression and anxiety, according to this scale, is out the roof. Right? So it's important that we're able to screen for those types of things through the collaborative care model, right? So you can get more information on that. Businesses are also, how about creating an interactive mental health workshop and talk like this, especially for leadership. And the reason I keep saying leadership is because I work with a lot of leaders. And I see how the mindset of a leader can really affect the whole organization. So bringing people in to have talks about mental illness, I guarantee you it'll be worth it. It will be. Mental health workshops, interactive workshops. where people can ask questions, right? Let's create an environment, and we can do that again through the Right Direction Initiative. Let's really make discussing mental health in the workplace a thing. Let's normalize it. And one of the ways you can do that is through, again, interactive mental health workshops and talks. Another thing, encourage support groups. We have organizations like DBSA, NAMI, right? People that offer support groups. Encourage people, staff and employees to try out these support groups. They don't cost any money. Just people don't know that they exist. I'll tell you one thing, support groups help aid me in my recovery. I have been out of the hospital for 5 years. And one of those reasons is because of support groups. Because now you get into a place where people understand where you're coming from. Because regardless of the fact, mental health is still very stigmatized. So a lot of people aren't comfortable with addressing it, especially in the workplace, let alone talking about it. It's really hard to even talk about. But if somebody could go to a support group on their own time, encourage that. There's so many resources for that. These were the resources I was talking about. This is kind of in a way, but it's okay. This is one of the flyers that Right Direction has, right? Don't stay in the fog at work. Don't stay in the fog at work. And it basically just tells you like, hey, you have access to useful tools and resources that help you deal with your depression. And all you have to do is put this up somewhere, maybe in your employee break room, maybe, or in a safe place. And it's kind of cool too. They have a lot of different flyers that you can print out and put around the office. And again, this initiative doesn't cost any money, nothing. These are resources. We see how important mental health is in the workplace. So for an organization like the American Psychiatric Association to even come up with these things, it's pretty awesome. And it means that we need to talk about it more. Right here, we have the depression calculator. Now, this is what I really wanted to talk about because this is where you will understand and see how depression impacts your bottom line, that ROI, right? So if you go to the website and you just type in the depression calculator for employers, it wouldn't let me get all of it, but you can put in your industry type, the number of employees, and your region. And what it'll do is, and then you put in some other information too, and what it will do is it will spit out a report for you of how much money you could potentially be losing in absenteeism and presenteeism. It tells you that. And I think it's pretty cool because that's where I got that 121,000 number from, a local business here in Ocala. So these resources are available to you. They're available to everybody. And like I said, my whole thing is we can get down and we can talk about all of the statistics about depression, but the reality is we have to be solution oriented, right? So this is a way that we can be solution oriented and really help the workplace. So this isn't the end, but it almost is. So the bottom line is when depression is effectively addressed in the workplace, it promises to lower total medical costs, increase productivity, lower absenteeism, and decrease disability costs. Investing in employee mental health and early detection programs is a wise investment with a high return on investment. But there is one thing that I wanted to kind of bring up to you guys, because at one point, I believe that we're gonna have a Q&A at some point. But I thought this was very interesting because it kind of levels it to just the person, one person. It says that the average annual healthcare cost for a person with major depression is $10,836. That's for one person. So do that one person times, what number was it? Almost the 80% of people dealing with depression. That's a lot of money, ain't it? I'm just throwing figures out here to you guys because this is based on my research, right? And my experience. It's sad that businesses are losing this kind of money because everybody wants to be in business to be successful. But if you want your business to be successful, your staff has to be successful and you have to be successful as well. So and I have numbers and all types of numbers and facts here, but I think I've given enough for you guys to understand that from a business standpoint, we're losing money. And now because of COVID, people don't want to work. People are more anxious, right? Studies are telling us that because COVID, more people are depressed and anxious, not just because of the pandemic, but going back to work. Because think about it, nobody wants to get COVID. And then when you go, you might be anxious about getting it because so many people are there, right? So what we need to do is find a way to really effectively address mental health in the workplace. So important. I have a list of references. I have a billion of them because I'm a researcher, right? So, but if you want a full list of the references, I do have those available. And again, I can't stress it enough. Having the experience of depression and the business knowledge of training entrepreneurs, this is a situation that can help us all if we can address it. A happier staff, right? Because when people are not depressed, they perform better, don't they? Right? When people feel good about themselves, they're more alert, they're focused, right? They can make better decisions. But if we don't recognize the signs first, then that's when we start losing productivity. People start missing work. And then at that point, now we get into the even more depressing side of depression. Because once we get to the point where we're making all of these mistakes and having all of these symptoms of depression, and now we're losing work, now we're not coming to work, that means that the depression has gotten worse. That means we didn't find it. And unfortunately, for some people, it ends not in a really good way. So, hey, you can find me on the internet. I did not talk about something, and it was on here when I was talking about NAMI. I just want to bring it up real quick. And I was talking about tools, tips for employers. There's a support group that my wife and I started. It's called Breathe. And it is all about mindfulness and helping people to learn, because a lot of us don't know that just the simple exercise of breathing can relax us and calm us. So we have a support group online where we give a lot of the same information that I'm giving you. We put it in a group, but it's also a safe place to talk, to discuss the things that are going on with you and to get that support that you truly need. It's open to business owners. It's open to anybody. It's called Breathe, period, right? It's not called Breathe, period, right? Because my wife was just like, you know, all the young kids say period now. I got a 16-year-old daughter who will period you to death. So it is just Breathe, okay? So you can look it up, and that could be a great place to start for employees that may be a little reluctant to kind of get into talking about depression and mental illness in the workplace. So, like I said, you can find me online. I really, really, really appreciate you guys' attention and for just allowing me to share a part of my story and my expertise with you. I never mind coming to discuss mental health anywhere because I'm an advocate for it. And I feel like it's something that is purpose for me. Ever since I was diagnosed with bipolar, it's something about me that went out to our community. And I want to spread as much awareness as possible. So for those people watching on Facebook, I appreciate you guys. You can always follow me. Like I said, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube, but I got to update that. All right.
So is it, I have a question,
Yeah.
breathe.com, is that, or how do they get to the Breathe?
So Breathe, right now, it's just a support group on Facebook.
Okay.
So there's not a website for it yet, but the group is on Facebook. It's called Breathe.
So if they go to Facebook, okay,
Mhm.
got it.
Yep.
Now, another question, the lack of productivity, not following through, a lot of the symptoms of depression as an employer are also symptoms of just somebody being lazy or somebody not doing their job or somebody. So how, as an employer, do you start that conversation and get to the root of it instead of just saying, you know what, I mean, they, you know, are just not showing up and, you know, they're uninterested and they're late and they're not following through on projects. A lot of those things are productivity based. So how do you start a conversation with someone to kind of dig down if they are depressed versus just not doing their job?
Okay, so great way to do that, right? So again, awareness and education, right? Again, educating the leadership team on what the signs of depression look like. Because what you want to understand is that there are signs of depression and then there are just signs of just being lazy, right? You can't typically help signs of depression, you can't. And I remember there was a time where I heard somebody, they were talking to a doctor and the doctor was asking them questions. It was like, I can't control it, I just can't. And so it's also about just being educated. That's how you can start the conversation. With things like that Right Direction program, you can give small resources like that because again, we talked about it, right? You don't know. You don't. Because depression doesn't have a face, it doesn't discriminate. So you won't know if it's depression or anything else until you start to have that conversation. And if you know the signs of what to look for, right? Because there are more than one sign that points to depression. If it's just about being lazy, that's one thing. But if it also shows sign of poor concentration, getting into arguments with a lot of staff, making the workplace hostile, just all different types of things. If we can learn the signs and what to look for, I think we would be better able to have that conversation with people to really determine, you know, what it is. But obviously only a professional can, you know, say that. But again, that even goes back to the collaborative care model. If there's something, they can have that PHQ-9 test done that'll tell us clinically where they are, you know, as far as depression goes.
Hey, John, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
All the numbers about work and workplaces are really important. And I guess I'm a little focused coming from NAMI about another side to things. Could you comment a little bit on the effect that a depressed individual or bipolar 2 or the experiences you've had have had on your family or on family members?
Yes. So a lot of us know that, and we try not to, but as much as we try not to, we bring work home, right? And we bring home to work. We try not to, but we do. And so when a person, and I had to just realize this about myself, I started to get very argumentative. I was very irritated. I was isolated. I would isolate myself. My communication was poor, right? And this caused a little bit of, how can I say it? my wife and I weren't aligned, and it affected my relationship with my children at home, right? Because my kids, all 7 of them, and that number 7 is just a thing for me. I'm sorry, it's just a thing. So, but it's hard to be engaged when you're depressed, right? It's hard to make good decisions when you're depressed because depression, it follows you everywhere. It's at home, it's at work, it follows you at work, at home, and it never goes away. So all of those same signs and symptoms in the workplace can happen at home too, right? And then we're also now compiling work pressure, right? Because especially as leadership, people place all these demands on us. They want us to do this, they want us to move like that, this, that. And now you're stressed out because you're trying to meet deadlines, you're trying to do all of this stuff. And guess what? That stress compiled with the stress at home because you're depressed makes it extremely hard to do anything. And this is why people end up not getting out the bed when they're depressed and not coming to work, absenteeism, right? Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you. I learned a lot. I hadn't heard of the word presenteeism. So that was really insightful. And if you saw me over here doing this, I was like sharing on Facebook, I'm tagging people, I'm like, you need to be in there, you need to be watching this. So I just thank you for everyone that put it together and for sharing, your experiences and helping us learn how we can better serve our community and our families.
Thank you. Yes.
So your group is just an open group, it doesn't have to be by invitation?
Well, it's a private group, so all you do is just, send a request and then we would have to just approve it. There are like a list of questions that you have to answer, but it's very basic. We actually just started the group, so it's not, it's not a lot of people in it, but that was one of the reasons that we started it here, because I know that also on Facebook, right? Hey, y'all on Facebook, go to Breathe, right? On Facebook, and you will see it. And you can join the group and gotta have a great time. Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about the youth.
Mhm.
Are youth welcome to the group, or is there a specific subset that you have? Because I know, especially the teenagers, that group, when they get about 15, 16, is there a separate?
I'm kind of in between about that. I personally would say maybe like 16 to 18 and up, just because of the type of material that'll be on there. So I want to make sure that everybody on there can kind of comprehend and understand like what's going on there. And then some topics may be kind of mature too. So I think probably like 16 and up, but I definitely want everybody to be able to be a part of it.
I have a question from Facebook. How can employers incorporate the conversation in recruiting and onboarding?
Yay. Okay, so we're starting to add the right direction. It's so crazy. We're implementing the right direction program either next week or the following week, right? So giving material, right? Right direction gives you all of the material, literally. And all you have to do is go on the website, and I think that will open up. So if you have like an onboarding process, a lot of times employers give like folders with information in it, and maybe you could just put a flyer in the folder and just give it to them and let them know it's a resource that's available to you.
And I think too, you show, here's our dental, here's our, health insurance to, again, mental illness is a disease just like anything else, you know what I mean? So, just making people, I guess, aware that that's an opportunity, and you're, open to having that conversation in the workplace, I think is really important.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, on Facebook, there's a lot of Breathe on, what is the picture?
It looks like, let me go back to it so you can see it. Come on. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on here, but it's in cursive and it looks like, hold up. Hey, that's me again. All right, it's right here. This is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see it. It's like green and it says Breathe and it's a dot next to it. It's a group, it's not a page.
Right.
Yeah, just to make sure. Mhm.
And the other thing is, once we
Yep.
pull it up, yeah, I can always add it in the comments.
Oh, yeah, she said she can add it in the comments.
Yeah.
My wife should have it, or it should be pulled up on our phone too.
So I think we have time for one more question. If anybody here in person has another question for Mr. Shaw. Okay, this is a very small token of our appreciation, and
Thank
can we
you.
just give a round of applause for Mr. Shaw? Presenter today, Albert C. Shaw III from The Zone. Thank you so much for being here with us and for that great information, and thanks for sharing something of yourself. That made it really meaningful. So thank you again to Andrea Bailey and to the CEP for this Friday talk. Just a quick announcement. Next month, we will have Friday talks right here again on July 24th. Our speaker next month will be Loretta Schaefer. She's the Director of Tourism Development for Marion County. And if nobody has any other questions, that's it for this morning. Thank you. Thank you.